Can everybody hear me okay? Yep. I'm going to give a quick hello, and just to make sure, in case people don't know me, I'm Lucian. I work for Timstar. I have been around the schools for the last 20 years. So if anybody's new out there and doesn't know who I am, now you know. I'm very grateful to Alan for giving me this opportunity to have this session with yourselves, because obviously over the last year and a half things have been very different. So I've been back in the schools again since you came back after the summer, and I just wanted to give you an update as to where Timstar are at as well. So there's been a lot of confusion, which I just want to clear up. A lot of people now know that Timstar sit under the WF Education Group, and the WF Education Group bought Timstar in 2009. So it happened 11 years ago, but we changed our legal entity. That was back in January 2020, just before COVID hit, and we informed the schools, but I think a lot of people were unaware of this change, and they just thought we had been bought over, and so a lot of people got confused, especially when it comes to the framework, which I'm going to talk about as well before I'm going to talk about what I'm obviously here to talk about, the session that I can deliver. So WF Education, as I said, bought Timstar back in 2009. I joined the company in 2007, so I've been with the company now for 15 years. And as I say, a lot of you will probably know me from visiting schools and supporting schools and helping you to get the best deal out of your science equipment. So that, nothing changes there. In terms of the Scotland Excel framework, that has been awarded to us. We are back on the framework for another 4 years. And there's been a bit of it's been very sort of different this time round, because we got awarded the framework back in August. But the new pricing has not got to you via your procurement systems. We're still working on the old pricing. So I would get your orders in now, because it's actually better. You've got 400 core products. It was Scotland Excel that basically changed it to the new framework has only 100 core products. So they reduced that shopping basket of the most commonly bought items down to 100. And then we just put the best discount that we could offer on those items selected by them. So the prices have not been uploaded yet. There's still 10% off all the non-core products. So everything else in this catalogue, you will get 10% off. And it's still free delivery on all orders, which means your ADR chemicals, you get free delivery regardless of the size of your order. So in every order, you will get free carriage. If you need me to help you, support you with anything, I am here. I can get Alan to stick my email in the chat, because it has changed, and a lot of people have been trying to contact me via the old email address. So if you want to take a note, and I'll get Alan to post it as well, it's lucian.mccallum@wf- or minus or dash, however you want to put it, education.com. And if anybody needs me to come in, or anybody needs, I'm an email or a phone call away, the number's still the same. My mobile is 07809 387 972. Still the same mobile, but the email has changed. And I know, as I said, some people have tried to send me an email via the Timstar one, and it was forwarding to the new one for about a year, but obviously COVID, nobody was about, and that was no use. So it's just to let everybody know what the new email address is. So that's a bit about the sort of clear up of who WF Education is, and you will find us in your procurement system under WF Education in brackets Timstar. And we have got a sports brand as well called Mod Sport. so you can let your other colleagues know that we sell all your footballs, basketballs and everything else. So we're now on the framework for not just science but also sport, because we have other brands that sit under the WF Education group. So we've got Timstar Science, we've got Technology Supplies, D&T, Mod Sport, we've got Greswell that does all your furniture. We've got a new modular furniture range for kitting out science laboratories, fully configurable, very innovative, can't say that at this point in the day when you've had 10 cups of coffee. And I'm going to talk about that in one of the sessions as well, about the modular furniture. We have done this, for quite some time, but the furniture has changed and it's really, really nice systems. So we can offer not just resources, but refits as well. And not just in science, but in D&T, sports and other breakout areas. So if anybody's got any refurbs happening, then you can let me know. But what I'm here to talk about today, Alan says about delivering 3 sessions. So I'm going to talk about the most popular one, is the DNA fingerprinting, which I offer free of charge to students. And I mainly cater for 16 to 18-year-olds, but I have done it for younger groups as well, for various STEM events, other sessions, open evenings. And this has become so popular. I have done this now for 7 years, the DNA sessions, but I'm limited to the availability. I'm actually fully booked now. I was fully booked as soon as the schools came back. I was getting emails flooding into my inbox asking if I could, if I was still able to deliver this, and I absolutely love it. And yes, I'm going to support schools. This is what I love to do. And it's just really first come, first served. So the students get a lot out of it. You're talking about, just to deliver one practical session, roughly about £2,000 of equipment that I provide. I don't ask for anything except 2 litres of deionised water, and that's at the use of a computer and projector for my presentation. But I get, just to go over what I do within the session, just to give you a kind of rough idea, and I can give you a copy of the presentation, not a problem. But as I say, I'm booked from now until February, and then I have dates. So if you want to get in there quick, I would do it now. If you roughly know a date that you would like, then we'll get you booked in. And I'm quite happy to deliver this to any number of students. As I say, it's completely free of charge. I have even worked with a group as much as 65 students in one sitting, and we did it in the dining hall. And goodness knows how I managed it, but it still worked really well. So what I get the students to do is, first of all, I give them an introduction. Who am I? What the company does. A bit of a career talk as well, just to sort of give them an idea as to, with this type of science background, this is where it's got me in terms of my career choices. So I give them a talk about me, the company, and then I move on to the objectives. And I take them through all the objectives for the practical lesson. It covers a double period, usually about an hour and a half, to deliver this session. They make up agarose gels. I show them, I take them through step by step each part of the practical element. So I'll talk about it first, I'll demonstrate, and then I'll get them to go into 6 groups. I've got 6 boxes, looking plastic boxes, with all the equipment in the box. They'll work within even groups, and within that box they have all the equipment to deliver the practical. So the first part of it is to make up the agarose gels. So they'll do this with a conical flask. They'll add the agarose powder. I provide a little compact balance. So it's 0.24 grams of the powder goes into the flask. Then you've got buffer. You use the syringe. 0.6 mils of concentrated buffer goes into the flask, and then distilled water between 29 and 30 mils. And then you've got an approximate volume of 30 mils. I bring my own microwave as well, because I've had some schools, their microwaves disappeared, and over lunchtime microwaves are very valuable, and they wonder what the science department have been doing with their microwave. So I provide everything, including the microwave. So the students take this to the microwave, they boil the contents for 1 minute, they'll bring it out safely with some paper towels round the neck, transfer it to the sink, and then cool it rapidly using the digital timer for 40 seconds. Once they have cooled it, they will bring it back to their bench and they will pour it into a casting tray which they need to assemble. So they need to put on these black end caps and they need to put in the blue comb as well. And then they pour the gel and leave it to set. And we've got one already made in there from a group that we did at Curry High School this morning. I was with the advanced higher students at Curry, and they were making up and doing this session earlier today. So the gel's poured, leave it to set, we move on to PCR. We have a discussion, a bit of a revision for them around PCR. So a few questions. What does PCR stand for? What's involved in the process? And I'll get them to give me the answers. It'll be a bit of an interactive session for them. And then we'll move on to the practical side of PCR. So I'll tell them about the different components. There's 5 components that go into the amplification of DNA. We're not going to use our DNA. We're using a celebrity's DNA. I have basically stolen a celebrity's DNA from an event that I gate crashed in London, and I give them the backstory, and it's all completely true. So I've got the celebrity's DNA in a little tube for them. I don't give them, obviously, the good part until the end. I talk about the rest of the components that they'll be working to amplify the DNA. So they've got the celebrity's DNA, they've got the nucleotides, they've got the primers, they've got the TAC DNA polymerase, and they've got magnesium chloride. So I explain what the 5 components are, and I go into a bit of visual detail on it as well. And then I'll give them the sample block containing the 3 samples, but still 5 components. This is your celebrity's DNA. That's your TAC DNA polymerase with your nucleotides and magnesium chloride. And then you've got your primer as well. And it'll go into a 0.2 ml Eppendorf tube. So all 3 samples, all 5 components get loaded into that tube. A lot of the students have never used an adjustable micropipette, so this gives them some skills going on to university. They get to experience some equipment they've never used and you might not be able to afford in the school. So this is all Edvotek equipment that I'm using. That's our supplier of all our equipment that I've got in front of me. I'll show the students how to use this. This works to 2 decimal place. It works between 5 and 50 microliters. So I'll get them to do proper loading of the samples using a pipette tip on the end, making sure that there's no cross-contamination with their DNA, making sure it's secure on the end, and then lifting up the first sample, adding 5 microliters. I show them how to set 5 microliters on here. This works on the vertical axis and it's 0,500, and it's all on the presentation for them to follow anyway. I show them how to use it. They can grip their hand round and then push up and down with their thumb. So they go into the celebrity's DNA, you go into that point there, you still have a gap, into the sample, lift up 5 microliters, close the lid, and then transfer into the small tube. So I get them to do this within their groups, and then use the blue eject button to eject the used tip into the lid, and then replace with a new tip and lift up the TAC DNA polymerase. It's 10 microliters this time. Add the sample, replace the tip, 20 microliters for the primer, until they've got all components loaded, and then it goes into the PCR machine. Now this is a new PCR machine. Some of you may have had this session. So the old PCR machine was the big purple machine at £1,100. We've now got a machine that's £600 and a lot more cost effective. Even though people obviously want me to come in and deliver this free of charge, that's obviously the best option. You don't have to buy the equipment. But some people off the back of these sessions want to actually buy the equipment. So it's just to let you know the equipment has come down in price. You've got a £600 PCR machine and it's got much more visual display. The last one had quite a small screen. This is full colour and you can see the cycles. So you pop your sample in, you load in the other samples, you put your control sample in, you close the lid down, and then you select your program. So on here you have saved programs. So you just click, it's all touch screen. You can scroll up and down. So if you want to do a paternity test, there's a code relevant to the kit that we supply, and it will tell you which one to select. So you just scroll up and down until you've got the right one and then press run. You'll hear the fan come on and that's it running. So it usually takes about 2 to 3 hours for that to go through the 3 heat cycles to amplify enough DNA. So that's where I cut a corner. obviously we're working within an hour and a half, a double period. So I tell the students at this point we're going to improvise. Once this is obviously finished, you would take the sample out and you would have to do something before you add it into your gel. You've got a colourless sample and a colourless gel, so you would have to add a dye, and I'm hoping to get that answer from them. So there's a gel loading dye goes in between taking it out of here and adding it into a well here. So the students then prepare their gels ready to accept the PCR samples. So they take out the comb, they remove these rubber end caps because you need to remove that to fit it into the electrophoresis tank, and then they'll add the samples in. So they'll be given a quick strip of samples, and they'll do different diagnostic tests relevant to real life applications. So one group will do a crime scene, one will do a COVID test, one will screen their patients for cancer gene deficiencies, another one will do genetically modified foods, another group would do sickle cell anemia in a child, another group would do a paternity test. So you've got different types of testing going on within the 6 groups. So that's your samples you're going to load. You're going to use your adjustable micropipette to load the samples, and you're going to load one sample into each well. And again, it's just putting a fresh tip on the end for the transfer of each sample into each well. And the students do this absolutely brilliantly. They don't need to practice, they really do. There's never been a problem. As I say, I've done it for 7 years and everybody seems to get the hang of this. Once the samples are loaded into the wells, they are now ready to sit into the electrophoresis tank. So this tank is a hexagel tank. We do singular, we do double tanks, we do protein electrophoresis tanks. This one's obviously for class purpose. So we've got some casting trays already in position. It holds 6, hence the name, the hexagel tank. So you can get six groups, 6 gels, load them in, and you need some buffer and distilled water in this tank before you run it. So 980 mils of distilled water, 20 mils of buffer sits in the tank. And you can only sit it in one direction. DNA is negatively charged, so it sits at the negative electrode. That's where the samples start, and it runs towards the positive electrode. So you would pop the lid on and then just connect it up to your power supply. And I set it running at 150 volts. You've got a dual power supply here, and you can just set that running, and it'll take about half an hour for the samples to go through. So the gel basically acts like a mesh sieve. It separates out the long and short fragments of DNA. The gel loading dye is the indicator for you to see it run from one end of the gel to the other. You obviously can't see the bands because, as I said, DNA is colourless. So once this is run through, then we have to stain up, and that's an overnight process. And I show the students there's 2 types of both methylene blue, but liquid form and impregnated onto the card. So the gel comes out after 30 minutes into a staining dish, bit of distilled water. I prefer to use the card, it's less messy. Create a sandwich, let it soak up the stain for about 30 seconds, and then remove the stain. You can bottle it up and you can reuse it. Along with the gels, you can run the DNA off and you can reuse the agarose. So there's ways and means of saving money. The buffer in the tank, I bottle it up, I put it in the fridge, and I reuse it as well. I've learned these things over the years. You know, science technicians have given me lots of great tips and ideas, and I've adopted that as well as saving money, because I know it's obviously money is of an essence. So once it's stained, then you've got a light blue gel and dark blue bands, and then you can do your analysis. And because the students actually don't see anything in terms of the gel, the physical gel, I show them on the slide, so they'll see all the different diagnostic tests, and we'll go over that, and then we'll finish off with some case studies. So I'll show them a real DNA fingerprint, and I'll give them 3 case studies based on the power of these types of techniques. Obviously, it's so crucial in the last year and a half. Everybody knows what a PCR test is. Everybody is aware of lateral flow testing, so this is second nature now. This type of equipment has been so prominent in the fight against COVID. So PCR testing, everybody knows about, and then creating the vaccine as well. So it's just so highly topical to talk about these things within the classroom today. for people to understand this is the equipment that's actually getting us through this. And then, as I say, the case studies are just sort of fascinated with the Colin Pitchfork case, first DNA fingerprinting, where Colin Pitchfork, back in the 80s, committed horrific crimes. He raped and murdered 2 innocent 15-year-old schoolgirls in Leicestershire. The community were at large. Sir Alec Jeffreys and his team were just at the cutting edge of DNA fingerprinting. They were brought in to assist with catching this killer, and basically they tested 3,000 individuals within the Leicestershire area. He wasn't caught initially because he got someone else to submit a sample on his behalf, and he got a friend to cover for him. How he was caught was sometime later. He was in the pub, he was having a drink. He basically bragged at that point to his friend about what he had done. Someone overheard the conversation, brought him in for questioning. A DNA test was conducted, and that DNA test got him a 30-year life sentence. And I tell the students, he's just been released. This is just very current news that he's been given a new identity. So they just can see it in terms of real life case studies, how this can be adopted and how this can be adapted for various applications. And then I'll finish off with a couple more case studies, and that's us done. So I hope that was all right for everybody, but that's just to give you an idea as to what I do, and I can send the presentation so you can get a bit more of an idea of it as well. But I think I've gone into a lot of detail. If anybody wants to ask any questions, or wants to put it in the chat, or wants to email me or get in contact later, not a problem. It's just nice to see some faces at last. And hopefully I get to come in at some point to see everybody.